Hi, how you doing? This is your girl Tysheen. How you feeling? Yes. So I'm gonna be reacting to why driving in Europe is better than America. Woo. I don't know what to think of. I guess y'all very strict when it comes to driving. I don't know what makes it better. Less traffic, I guess. That could be that too. I don't know what else. I don't know. Let's see. Let's hear what he have to say. They're better drivers. Europeans are better drivers. What? I mean, it's not like traffic. Oh, I could drive. That's
I love driving.
Smooth ride.
And I especially love driving in Europe. I've been living in Europe for about 2 years now, originally from Orlando, Florida.
Oh, wow.
I've lived in Amsterdam for about 2 years now. Amsterdam isn't exactly a car place, but I've always been a car person, and I've always loved driving. Yeah. What I like about living in Europe is that European drivers are excellent, especially compared to American drivers. I was inspired for this video after watching a video by Tedward, which I'll link in the description below. In his video, he was explaining why Americans don't use a 3-lane highway correctly. And it got me thinking how much I appreciate driving in Europe. European drivers are some of the best I've seen, and I think some of the best in the world. And I'm hoping to explain why I believe so in this video. Now, I haven't done any research. This is just my experience, so if I'm wrong about anything, please correct me in the comments. This is just my perspective, having lived in Europe for 2 years, having driven mostly around Western European countries, such as Netherlands, Switzerland, France, Germany, UK, and in the US, I primarily have driven in Florida. So Florida's not exactly known for the best drivers, especially we get a lot of tourists who don't know how to drive in the US, and a lot of elderly folks, and just people who don't know the right rules of the road. So that's my benchmark, that's what I'm comparing against. One of the main reasons I think European drivers are better is just driving in general is a privilege. So if you look at most European places, most European cities, you don't need a car. You don't need to drive anywhere. Public transportation is well established. You can use a train, a metro, a tram to get pretty much anywhere you need to go. You can use public transportation to get pretty much anywhere, so you don't really need to drive. Only if you live in more suburban parts of Europe, but even then public transportation is still available.
Okay.
So Europeans don't have to drive. They want to drive. And because they want to drive, they put more effort into it. On top of that, getting a driver's license in most European countries is a much more involved and expensive process. For example, in the Netherlands, getting a driver's license can cost a couple €1,000 because you have to do mandatory driving lessons. On top of that, the age to get a driver's license is much older than most states in the US. So I believe in the Netherlands you can start learning to drive around 16 and a half years old. That's when you do your theory test and then you start doing driving lessons. You don't have a full driver's license without restrictions until you're 18 years old.
Wow.
Compared to Florida, where I'm from, you start driving at 15. You do your theory test and you start driving at 15.
I didn't know that.
You only have to have a learner's permit for 1 year, and there's no mandatory driving lessons. Your parents can teach you how to drive. On top of that, the cost in general for driving is much lower. The cost of getting a driver's license is much lower in the US. And driving is kind of a necessity in a lot of parts of the United States, except for major metropolitan cities.
Yeah.
You have to drive. So getting a driver's license is less of a privilege in the US and more of a necessity. So that distinction alone, I think, contributes to a lot of the differences that I'm going to.
Yeah, he's right. Cause especially here in New York, you don't really need a car. You pretty much could just hop on the train and go anywhere you want to go. There's buses that run every 3 to 5 minutes. The bus are coming back to back to back to back to back. Trains, taxis, Uber, Lyft, even private. What you call those, like they used to call it dollar vans, but they're not called dollar vans anymore. But they're a little cheaper than the city transportation. But yeah, here you don't, like I said, you don't need a car. But there are people who still want cars, you know, because they feel more comfortable driving than taking the transportation. Like me, I don't like taking public transportation, especially here. But yeah.
Right now. So getting a driver's license is a much more involved process, especially in countries like the Netherlands. In Germany, it also requires mandatory lessons. It costs a lot of money. So when they invest that much into getting a driver's license, they don't want to lose it. They learn to drive properly.
Yeah.
They learn the right rules of the road. They don't want to do anything to jeopardize that, and they drive accordingly. You can see here in this example, I'm just outside of Amsterdam. There's nobody cruising in the left lane. I'm driving at 5:30 in the afternoon right now.
Wow.
Nobody is cruising in the left lane. The left lane is only for passing. You can see how people use the lanes.
Yeah.
They're very well disciplined. And that's a common theme. They're well disciplined drivers.
Yeah.
This goes back to how they learn to drive. They have to take mandatory lessons. Their parents aren't teaching them to drive. Their parents aren't passing on bad habits about driving.
I was going to say, one thing I like about this tour that I've noticed too, everybody's giving each other space. Oh my God. That's one thing that irritates me when I'm driving. I don't like people too close to me. We're not supposed to, when we drive, we're not supposed to be too close because God forbid, anything could happen to the car in front of you or in the back. You need space between cars. People do not respect space here. I'm sorry, I just had to add that. Like here in America, people don't respect space at all. Not at all.
They're learning the proper rules of the road. They're executing them while they learn to drive. So even though you take a theory test in the US on what the rules of the road are, you don't really remember that. You remember what you learned while you were learning to drive. And
That's
oftentimes that's from what your parents taught you. And that's not the case in Europe.
Yeah.
You'll see here the highway just widened up and people immediately start moving to the right. Not everybody, but most people do. Nobody's fighting. Nobody's rushing. They're just following the rules. They're well disciplined.
You can see.
Don't get me wrong. Not everybody follows every rule. You can see there are some more aggressive drivers sometimes, but it's not the norm. And even the more aggressive ones tend to get on their way, get out of the way. They're not messing with anybody. They're not pissing anybody off.
No.
There's no real road rage. So discipline is one of those key important attributes.
We don't have it here.
The next thing is the roads in general. The roads are well maintained. I'm going off of what I've seen in the Netherlands and Germany. Not every European country has the same privilege. I've seen some pretty poor roads in countries like Belgium. And even I've heard in Italy, roads aren't as nice. But you can see here the highway is well maintained. There are no potholes. It's quite wide.
I noticed that.
And people use the lanes correctly. So even though there's a lot of lanes, it allows for a lot of capacity because
I think I don't know if I mentioned it, but I noticed that too. Like the streets are just clean, it's smooth. You don't see cracks, you don't see holes anywhere. Nobody's like blowing a horn, making noise. Everybody is just driving smoothly with no problem at all. And I like this. And like I said before, people give each other space. So when you give each other space, you're respecting each other.
People actually follow the rules of the road. They stay to the right. They only pass on the left. They pass and then they get back over. And that's the general way it works here. So when they add more lanes, when the highway is wider, it allows for much more free-flowing traffic, a lot more capacity, a lot more cars. Unlike places like Houston where they added lanes, nobody follows proper rules there. So they continue to sit in the left lane, even if it's 16 lanes wide, and it doesn't help the traffic situation at all. In this area, this is a speed controlled area, so it's actually controlled by average speed cameras. I'll deep dive into that in a separate video, but the Netherlands has some of the strictest speed laws in Europe. Talking about the rules of the road, when you look at truckers, they also follow the rules very strictly in Europe. They're almost always all the way to the right. They rarely are passing. There are zones where they're not allowed to pass. They're rarely in the left lane. They're rarely passing. When they do pass, they get back over to the right lane immediately. There's less clogging of traffic. So discipline, learning the rules of the road, following them, these are important themes. The process to get a driver's license is much more involved, much more strict.
It should be.
Another thing with driving in Europe, in my opinion,
honest.
the cars are much more solid. They're much more roadworthy. You have vehicle inspections, so people can't drive old, beat-up cars. You have to have your vehicle inspected ever so often. Depending on the age of the vehicle, it's either once a year or once every few years. There's rules about what the vehicle can or can't have equipped on it. It has to pass inspection for you to keep driving it on the road. So the roadworthiness of vehicles is also better. And some states have this. Florida in particular doesn't have this. So you see people driving on the highway with rickety vehicles that are falling apart. They've gotten into an accident and they haven't fixed the vehicle. It's a road hazard, in my opinion. That doesn't happen here. People maintain their cars well in the first place. They have to maintain them well because to keep driving them on the road, they have to pass the inspections. Germany has some of the strictest inspection laws. You can see many videos on YouTube about passing the TÜV inspection. I haven't had to go through this personally in the Netherlands, but I do know that inspections are required. I haven't seen any poorly maintained vehicles on the road. And because of this, so because of the discipline, because of the roadworthiness of the vehicles, generally Europe has higher speed limits. The Netherlands used to have a national speed limit on the highway of 130 kilometers an hour, which equates to 81 miles per hour. People used to drive faster than that. Recently, as of March of 2020, there's a national speed limit of 100 kilometers an hour until 7 p.m. Some roads are still 100 kilometers per hour in general. I'll do a separate deep dive into that in another video about the Netherlands. But in general, countries like Germany or France, the highest speed limit you'll see on suburban highways is 130 kilometers an hour. And people drive faster than that. You can easily drive 140 kilometers an hour without any issue. And again, if everybody follows these rules of the road, driving that fast, even on narrow highways, isn't an issue. You can also see in the Autobahn, people driving much faster than that. It's a 2-lane highway, yet there's very little accidents. And that goes back to the discipline of following the rules of the road. People keep to the right. Even if somebody is driving faster than you, it's completely safe. I'll have to do another video about the Autobahn because that's a whole experience in and of itself. As an American, I truly love and appreciate the Autobahn, and I wish that America had that privilege, but honestly, the drivers don't deserve it. Another reason driving in Europe is so much better, again, going back to the discipline, you'll see this as a common theme. There's very little distracted driving. People are focused on driving while they're driving. They're not on their phones, they're not eating, they're not really drinking coffee, they're not reading a book, they're not doing all of these crazy things you see people in America do while they drive. They're focused on driving. And they have to be focused on driving. You're not allowed to be using your phone. You're not allowed to be eating while you're driving. You're not allowed to be doing anything but...
Even when I'm driving, those are the things I don't do. I like to focus driving. I always tell anybody that anybody call me on my phone, I'm not going to answer it. So if I don't answer my phone, and if I'm outside, I don't answer my phone, it's because I'm driving. Like my phone is... I'll have my phone on the passenger seat, but it'll sit there. I will not pick it up. People do that here. You know, they'll eat. They'll be on their phone. There's a woman who I was so upset because she was driving. She almost caused an accident. She was putting makeup on her face, y'all. Makeup, lipstick. She was putting a lipstick on, and me and my brother was looking at her like. I don't think she heard us, but we was cursing at her because the window was up. But was like, what's your fucking problem? Really, miss? You putting on makeup while you driving? You almost hit us. Like, what the hell? But yeah, we have some terrible drivers here. Terrible.
But driving while you're driving. In fact, in the Netherlands, they started rolling out a system where there are cameras over the highways that will look at cars and take pictures. If you're caught driving while you're on your phone or doing something while you're distracted while you're driving, they'll actually mail you a ticket. So they're very strict about enforcing no distracted.
I mean, they pretty much, I think they do that here too. We have cameras on the roads. I don't know if a lot of places have that, but I know here in New York, there are, I don't know if they did that in Georgia. When I was in Georgia driving, I don't remember they having cameras. They probably do. But I know here in New York, we have a lot of cameras on the street, so. I know they take pictures if you're speeding. They take pictures of your license when you're speeding. I don't know if they have pictures like inside your car. They could see inside your car. I'm not sure if they could do that. But we have laws. Let me tell y'all something. We do have laws here, but like when it comes to driving, but people don't take it serious, and the city don't take it that serious neither. Like I don't think they do. So yeah. That's why there's so much accidents.
And people follow it. People focus on driving. And when you focus on driving and you have drivers that are focused on driving, you can have much more freedom and much more driving enjoyment. So distracted driving isn't really a thing here, and it's really well enforced. I think that helps contribute to some of the driving characteristics of some of the roads. People are much more focused. So there aren't really distractions while you're driving. You're focused on driving, you're paying attention, and this is part of the reason why there are some things you really need to pay attention to while you're driving in Europe. Things like roundabouts, things like speed humps, things like pedestrian zones, bicycle lanes, trams, buses, horses that are allowed to be in traffic, a lot of different things that you need to pay attention to, and that's why you really need to pay attention while you're driving. And Europeans do in general. Now, as an American driving in Europe, I am guilty of carrying over some of my bad habits about distracted driving. But when I need to pay attention, I pay attention. And I've always thought of that in the US.
And you have to respect that too. If you're American and you go into some of these countries, you better learn how to drive better in these other countries because they're not having it, okay? So don't start bringing your bad habit. Don't bring your bad driving habits to some of these countries because they're not having it. They strict, okay? So yeah, none of that blasting music. Looking at your phone and putting on makeup on your face and doing and whatever, God knows what other people be doing in their car. But concentrate driving, okay?
This as well. I pay attention while I'm driving. I focus on driving. I get pleasure out of that. And that's the norm here in Europe. You drive when you're driving. You're not doing anything else. It's not a time when you're, catching up on emails or reading a book or eating your lunch. You can see here, this is one of these roads that's almost one car width wide. It shares a bicycle lane. And this is a bi-directional road. You really have...
Okay, that lane is... that's tight. I'm not gonna lie. I'll be so confused because I'll be thinking, am I driving on the wrong side? So he said that's okay, so the red lane right there is the bike. Whoa, that's kind of tight.
You have to pay attention here. You have to mind the space. If a car's coming in the other direction, you have to squeeze to the right and make sure there's enough space.
Yeah.
But when the road is empty like this, you can enjoy it. One difference with Europe, generally people don't use cars to commute. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people that do commute to work by car in Europe and European cities. But in general, cost of parking is very expensive. Fuel is very expensive. People don't use a car to commute if they don't have to. So people will often defer to public transportation to get to work. So people aren't driving regularly as much as they do in the US. So usually when they're driving, it's for pleasure, not so much necessity. Of course, it's maybe necessity to go somewhere, but they're focused on driving while they're doing it. It's not part of their morning commute. And this is generally speaking, this is my take. It's not scientific, of course. I like that I can choose to drive when I want to drive. I can enjoy driving. I'm lucky that I live in Amsterdam. I don't have to commute. I don't have to commute by car. Another thing I've noticed is when people are towing something or carrying cargo, it's well secured. It's covered with a net. Things don't fly out of trucks. Things don't fly out of trailers. People, when they're towing something or when they're carrying something or hauling something, they're staying to the right. They're driving in the slower lane. They're not passing anybody. They're not driving erratically. I remember regularly seeing in Florida landscaping trucks with trailers with things that are just bouncing around, flying around, things that could fly off of the trailer in any second. And those guys are driving 80-something miles an hour in the passing lane, passing cars, driving erratically. That just doesn't happen here. You consider some of the points that I've mentioned. Driving in Europe is overall safer. If people follow the rules, it makes for a safer experience for cars, for pedestrians, for cyclists. It also makes for a better driving experience as a driver. And that's why I love driving in Europe. After a long road trip, I don't feel exhausted. I don't feel like I was dealing with a lot of bad drivers. I don't feel like I was dealing with a lot of people sitting in the left lane. I don't feel that fatigue that you feel when you drive in America. I actually feel quite relaxed while I drive. And it's because there's similar people like me driving, people who want to drive, people who enjoy driving, people who pay attention while they're driving. So I feel like I'm sharing the road with a lot of like-minded individuals. I also feel like driving in Europe, I've become a better driver. I've learned things that I didn't learn in America. Roundabouts, for example.
I know.
Dealing with cyclists regularly. Like I said, this is my personal experience. It's definitely not fact. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, comment below. Let me know if y'all agree with him. Let me know if y'all agree with him. But I mean, something he's saying does make sense though. But you know, the difference is that he has to understand too, like where he's at right now. He's in Netherlands, he said, right? People don't drive that much there, so of course there's not gonna be a lot of cars on the street. Here in America, you have to drive, especially certain states, you have to drive. Like I said, here in New York, you don't have to, but if you live in upstate New York, I'm assuming you do, well, yeah, you do have to drive a lot upstate New York. But like, if you live in a city, then of course you don't have to, but like certain places like Florida, Georgia, them places, those states, you have to drive. Like, it's a must, you know? Especially if your job is in the city, you have to drive. There's no doubt about it. You have no choice. Because some places don't have like, you know, a city transportation, public transportation. A lot of places don't have public transportation like that. So they have to have a car. It's a must. And but here you have a lot of people. You have a lot of people who are not from America. They're from other countries that move here. So you have a lot of them here, and sometimes I'll say a lot of them don't know how to drive when they come here. And I'm not just blaming on them. We have a lot of American drivers that just don't know how to drive. They drive terribly. And a lot of people, you know, move into a lot of states. So it starts to get like real crowded. So the more crowded it starts to become, it's going to be more cars on the street. So the more people, the more problems. More cars on the street, more problems. That's just, yeah, I don't know. Like he said, if maybe if they were a little bit more stricter, like more strict when it comes to driving here, maybe people would drive better. Things would, you know, driving probably be a little bit more smoother, but I don't know if they're ever gonna fix that type of problems because we have other problems here. So yeah, I don't know if they're gonna try to do something about that. So yeah, but oh man, am I the only one who enjoyed this video? I don't know. I feel like I was in a car with him. It just seems so relaxing. I don't know. I don't know. Driving does relax you. You know, when you're in the car, just cruising, it does relax you. It does. But anyway, I will see you lovely people. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel, and I have other videos here, okay, of Europe and about different countries and stuff. So check it right here, and I will see you lovely people. Take care. Drive safe. Drive safe. Peace.